Доброго вечора! Вітаємо всіх вас на черговому випуску програми «Форум ТВ». Я Лариса Баюс. У сьогоднішній нашій програмі інтерв'ю з президентом Світового конгресу українців Євгеном Чолієм. Ми також завітаємо на святковий банкет 45-річчя СКУ. А на сторінці культури та мистецтва познайомимося з танцюристом Денисом Дроздюком та побуваємо на концерті «Танцюй під мою пісню». Минулого тижня українці в Україні та по цілому світі вшановували пам'ять жертв Голодомору 1932-33 років у 79-ту річницю цієї трагедії. Вашій увазі репортажі на цю тему з України та Канади.
Минулого тижня в Києві українці відзначили 79-ту річницю Голодомору, вшановуючи пам'ять жертв геноциду.
Бо голодний 33-й лишив відбиток і на моїй родині. Принаймні по маминій лінії 3 померли. Усі вони діти. І, на жаль, ми досі так і не знаємо, де їхні могили. Вічна і світла пам'ять моїм рідним і усім померлим.
Прийми їх царство своє, вони цього заслужили. А нам живущим дай сили, дай здоров'я, щоб ми завжди пам'ятали про це страхіття, яке було на нашій землі.
Страшне діло було, не дай Бог. Хай діти ось наші предки, хай чого не бачать, не бажаю, і хай роблять все, щоб такого не було, що ми пережили. Це страшне діло було.
На свічках, які роздавалися разом з стрічками, були написані імена тих людей, які допомагали рятувати життя в 32-33 роках.
Марія Грінченко. Із Луганщини Микола Гнатенко.
Андрій Бабенко. Є країни світу, які нараховують по мільйону, по 2-3 населення. Це 10 мільйонів. Це так умовно просто 10. Це ціла країна знищена.
На жаль, живих свідків Голодомору щораз менше і менше.
Моя сестричка Галя була менше від мене на 2 роки. Мені було 6, а їй було 4 роки. І вона, бідненька, так плакала цілий вечір, що хочу їсти. Мамо, хліба, дай трошки хліба.
А діти такі страшні були, як нагадаю, такі голови великі, такі пузаті були, такі ноги такі тонкі, дехто пух, а дехто сох.
Так хотілося кусочок хліба до рота піднести, а його не було, того хліба.
Сьогодні прийшов вшанувати пам'ять тих українських людей, які жили, любили Україну, працювали на селах, але їх знищували тільки за те, що вони були українці.
Влада як така не визнає цю трагедію. Вона не має тої душі, яка б боліла, дивлячись і знаючи історію, що від 32-33 років загинуло 10 мільйонів українців голодом.
Це насправді жахливо, навіть слухати це жахливо.
Це дуже важка, невимовна трагедія. Не хочу, щоб ні на одній державі не повторилося оце страхіття, яке перенесли ми.
А в Канаді в соборі Успіння Пресвятої Богородиці духовенство обидвох українських церков, католицької і православної, відправило соборну панахиду.
болем в серці і зі сльозами в очах ми молимось до Господа Бога за спокій їхніх душ. Голодомор – це одна з найстрашніших катастроф в історії нашого народу і в історії цілого людства.
Опісля в церковній залі представники канадського уряду приєдналися до жалоби української громади в Канаді у 79-ту річницю трагічної сторінки історії України.
On this solemn occasion, we pay homage to the victims and express solidarity with the survivors and their descendants.
We cannot conjure up adequate resources to begin to understand the evil inflicted by Stalin and the communists in the Holodomor famine genocide. The murder of the millions of innocent men, women, and children for the crime of being Ukrainian.
In addition to the incredible, unimaginable atrocity of the intentional genocide, famine that affected millions and millions of Ukrainians, I think what is so unbelievable is the cover-up that has happened to deny that the Holodomor took place.
And you think that our leaders, our world leaders, at some point in time, they will say enough is enough, and we will move in order to stop such atrocities. Even to this day, atrocities are happening to Christians around the world.
I said to myself, I just learned that humanity died in 1932-33. And in this holy place, God, Mary, Joseph, and yes, Jesus, were crying.
So I think today, as we observe Holodomor Day, my request is that each of us, especially the children here, that we make a promise to ourselves that when we are tested, when it is our turn, and we will be tested in big ways and small, that when we are confronted with evil, we will find the courage to not stay silent. In marking this anniversary, we're also reminded that we must continue to work to combat intolerance and to protect the rights and dignity of every human being. Please accept my best wishes, Dalton McGuinty, Premier of Ontario.
співали. Сам Господи, упокой душі спочили рабів Божих, батьків, матерів, братів і сестер, і дітей, великим голодом замучених, в місті світлі, в місті злачні, в місті покойні, от душе одвіже по лісі воздихання, всякої согрішення, содіяної ними, словом чи ділом чи думкою, як благий чоловіколюбний Бог простив, нема людини, яка б жила і не зрішила, ти один і без гріха, правда Твоя, правда вовіки, і слово Твоє, як істини, як Ти єси воскресення, і живот, і упокоєння, душу зобших рабів Божих, батьків, матерів, братів і сестер, і дітей від великого голоду померлих, Христе Боже наш, і Тобі славу посилаю, що беззначальним Твоїм Отцем і присвятим благим і животворящим Твоїм Духом, нині і присно і во віки віков. дорогі браття і сестри, дорогі українці. Сьогодні ми відзначаємо цю сумну 79-ту річницю пам'яті жертв Голодомору. З болем в серці і зі сльозами в очах ми молимось до Господа Бога за спокій їхніх душ. Голодомор – це одна з найстрашніших катастроф в історії нашого народу і в історії цілого людства. Наслідок чітко спланованої політики тоталітарного і комуністичного режиму були знищені мільйони наших співвітчизників. Голодомор перевищив навіть втрати нашого народу під час Другої світової війни. На превеликий жаль, ми і до сьогоднішнього дня переживаємо наслідки цього безжального терору, спрямованого на винищення української нації. Урожайний український чорнозем став подібний до біблійної долини, яку у видінні бачив пророк Єзекіїл, і казав: «Рука Господня була на мені, і Господь вивів мене у дусі і поклав серед долини, долина ж була повна костей». Незважаючи на врожайні 1932-33 роки, в Україні настав жахливий і нечуваний в світі час. Мільйони українського народу гинули з голоду. Під карою смерті не вільно було приховати будь-якої поживи. За схований буханець хліба чи кілограм зерна жорстокий комуністичний режим карав селян смертю. Святий євангелист Матфей свідчить нам, що коли цар Ірод повбивав невинних дітей у Вифлеємі, то сповнилося пророцтво Єремії пророка. В рамі чути голос, плач і тяжке ридання, то Рахиль плачеть за своїми дітьми і не може втішитися, бо їх нема. Цар Ірод замордував не більше як 13 тисяч хлопчиків, а московський червоний Ірод Сталін вимордував штучним голодом мільйони українських людей. Не маємо точної статистики, але історики доводять, що в 1932-33 роках померло з голоду не менше як 7 мільйонів, а правдоподібно 10 мільйонів наших співвітчизників. Простора, багата урожайна українська земля, колишня житниця Європи, вкрилася мільйонами трупів, померлих голодною смертю. Пригадуються мені слова Тараса Шевченка: «Світе тихий, краю милий, моя Україно, за що тебе сплюндровано, за що нині гинеш?» Ми, віруючі, українські християни, і православні, і греко-католики, завжди будемо пам'ятати про цю жахливу трагедію і завжди річно будемо молитися за мільйони жертв, які показали велику силу і хоробрість. Вічна пам'ять загиблим від голоду і репресій нашим братам і сестрам. Молімося, мої дорогі, щоб до Господа Бога дійшла наша молитва за душі померлих наших батьків і прадідів, і щоб Господь захистив і тепер, в цей нелегкий час для України, нашу свободу і незалежність для майбутніх поколінь. З глибини душі благаймо Його словами нашої молитовної пісні. Боже великий єдиний, нам Україну храни. Слава Ісусу Христу!
This week, across Canada and throughout the world, Ukrainians and people of Ukrainian descent commemorate the 79th anniversary of Holodomor. On this solemn occasion, we pay homage to the victims and express solidarity with the survivors and their descendants. Today with us, we have the survivors, and let me call out their names. Mr. Mykola Latishko, Mrs. Vera Kanareyska, Mr. Fedir Strohi, Mrs. Halina Savranchuk, and Mr. Stefan Horlach. A famous Italian poet of the late 13th century, Dante, gave this horrid description of hell, and I quote, "When I wakened before dawn, I heard from my sleepy children a merciless, pitiful, unforgiving crying of hunger, the begging for bread." End of quote. In 1932 and in 1933, Stalin and his henchmen created such a hell, Holodomor. Canada was one of the first of over 25 countries to rightfully and solemnly recognize the Holodomor as a genocide in May 2008. Since then, similar legislations have been passed by the provinces of Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Alberta, Ontario, and Quebec. On the 23rd of October in 2008, the European Parliament passed a resolution that called Holodomor, and I quote, "an appalling crime against the Ukrainian people and against humanity that was cynically and cruelly planned by the Stalin regime." End of quote. This was a crime that has left deep wounds which will never heal. At this point, I would like to acknowledge our various guests, our government officials. Mr. Anatoly Olinik, the acting Consul General in Toronto from Ukraine. From the federal government, the Honorable Jason Kenney, Minister of Citizenship, Immigration, and Multiculturalism. Official opposition finance critic, Ms. Peggy Nash. The Honorable Jim Karygiannis, MP from Scarborough, Agincourt. Vladislav Lizon, MP, Mississauga East and Cooksville. And Ted Opitz, MP, Etobicoke Center. We also have honored provincial representation with us this afternoon. The Honorable David Levac, Speaker of the Legislative Assembly of Ontario, who along with co-sponsors Sherry DeNovo and Frank Cleese on April 9th, 2009, passed Bill 147, the Holodomor Memorial Day Act. With us as well, from Mississauga East, Cooksville, is Ms. Dipika Damerla. Our community leaders have come from various communities. We have the representative from the Latvian National Federation in Canada, Mr. Vilis Miklasevics. Please excuse me for mispronouncing any of the names. We have Mr. Yulish Kirechiv, Toronto Branch President of the Canadian Polish Congress. With us as well is Ms. Dunate Mashanovskaita from the Lithuanian Canadian community, again the Toronto chapter president. From the Italian community, I'm very pleased to welcome Mr. Michael Tibolo. And Fabio, I'm sorry I forgot your last name. And as well, I'd like to thank Mari Rutka, a trustee from the Toronto District School Board. At this time, I would like to invite our honored guests for the commemorative remarks.
Reverend Fathers, elected officials, ladies and gentlemen, but most importantly, the survivors of Holodomor who are in our presence, incarnating the memory that we bring to mind today. On behalf of the Government of Canada, thank you all for gathering for this commemoration, and most especially, thank you to the Reverend Fathers and the magnificent choir who allowed us to remember the sacred memory of those so brutally killed during the Holodomor in the most important way. We cannot conjure up adequate resources to begin to understand the evil inflicted by Stalin and the communists in the Holodomor famine genocide. The murder of the millions of innocent men, women, and children for the crime of being Ukrainian, of daring to try to actually own a small plot of land and take care of their families, of not bowing in every respect to the crime of collectivization of the Soviet communists. These crimes are of such an immensity, of such a gravity, that they are impossible for us to fathom. They bring to mind the words of the late Blessed John Paul II, who spoke about the Holocaust being a mysterium iniquitatis, representing the mystery of evil. And that too can be said of the Holodomor. Let me thank all of the members of the Ukrainian Canadian community for constantly bringing us back to this memory, for keeping it alive, and most especially for the survivors like Stefan Horlach and the others who have not allowed the memory to be lost. During the Soviet period, as we know, there was a deliberate effort to efface from history the reality of what happened in the Holodomor. We as Canadians can all be proud that Canada has insisted on recognizing the genocidal nature of the Holodomor, in part to call to the bar of history the criminals responsible for it, in part to remember the nature of this evil, but also in part so that we can all, throughout the world, be mindful of what kind of evil is inflicted when ethnic hatred and totalitarian power are used to take lives on a mass scale, and when food is used as a weapon. So next year, I know we will be commemorating the 80th anniversary of the Holodomor famine genocide. I encourage all of us to reach out to the diversity of of our country, to educate our fellow Canadians about what happened in 1932 and 33, so that we will never forget. May we all once again join in prayer that the souls of those whose lives were so brutally taken may rest in eternal peace. May eternal rest grant unto them, O Lord, and light perpetual shine upon them. Vichnayam Pamyat.
Your Grace, Reverend Fathers, honored dignitaries, dear friends, and especially to our honored Holodomor survivors, we thank you for your efforts, which are continuing to never let the world forget about the atrocities of the Holodomor. We thank you for that. It's with great honor that I join you today for this important commemoration of one of history's great atrocities. And I want to salute the Ukrainian community in Ukraine and around the world for your efforts to ensure that we never forget. Because in addition to the incredible, unimaginable atrocity of the intentional genocide, famine that affected millions and millions of Ukrainians, I think what is so unbelievable is the cover-up that has happened to deny that the Holodomor took place. I want to salute all the members of Parliament. I was honored to be in the House when we voted unanimously in Ottawa to recognize the Holodomor as a day of commemoration, and I salute provincial colleagues who have worked together to similarly recognize the Holodomor. But I know that you know the importance of not just commemoration, but of education, so that we do never forget. We want to teach our children empathy and understanding so that we never demonize others, so that we can walk in their shoes. But also, we want to educate children about this terrible genocide, to know the facts, to know what so many have struggled so hard to bring to the light of day, especially after the fall of the former Soviet Union. So I took the opportunity yesterday to make a statement in the House, once again calling on our provincial Ministry of Education to include the Holodomor in our education curriculum, and I urged all of my colleagues to similarly try to ensure that in provinces and territories across this country that the Holodomor is part of our education system so that our young people never forget. And it is so important that we see so many young people here today. And it is that commemoration and education that will hopefully prevent any such atrocities in the future. So I would like to just give a copy of this statement to Ms. Rewa for the Toronto UCC, and I want to thank all of those who organized this important commemoration today. Thank you.
Your Grace, Reverend Fathers, colleagues in all levels of government, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, it is a commemoration that we're here today to remember. However, there were other atrocities committed by other tyrants. And for me, personally, I cannot forget what happened in the Ottoman Empire to the Armenians, 1.5 million, to the Pontian Greeks, 350,000. And the list just goes on and on and on. And you'd think that our leaders, our world leaders, at some point in time, they will say enough is enough, and we will move in order to stop such atrocities. Even to this day, atrocities are happening. To Christians around the world, look what is happening in the Sudan. History, however, does not help us eradicate what is happening, and what has happened we don't get taught from. However, today we remember 80 years of what happened to your ancestors. I happened to be speaking to a gentleman which is 85 and he's still standing in fine shape, and he's wearing his poppy for the whole month, not only to remember to the atrocities of Hitler and to our fallen soldiers, but also to remember the Holodomor. I thank you for having me here today, as I also remember what happened to my forefathers, and my mother is a survivor and a product of the Pontian genocide by the Ottoman empires. So I share with you the pain, and I share with you the memories that we have of our grandparents as they raised us and they were telling us the stories. And when we were younger, we were sort of thinking that this is all a dream, this is all a little story that they were telling us. But it's not until you did a little bit of digging and you found out what happened, and I had to do that for my past, that I realized that the stories that they were telling us were indeed part of history and indeed part of us. I have a message from Bob Ray, and it reads as follows. But before I read the message, I want to also acknowledge a colleague that was in the House at the time that helped made this motion possible, and that's a former Member of Parliament, Boris Wisniewski. And for that, Boris, I think that the community owes you a gratitude. The message from Mr. Ray goes as follows. It's an honor for me to send greetings to everyone attending the services at the Mother of God Ukrainian Catholic Church to commemorate all who lost their lives in the Holodomor. I would like to thank the Ukrainian Canadian Congress, Toronto branch, for everything they've done on behalf of the Ukrainian Canadian community and for their work educating their fellow citizens on the tragedy that has forced on the Ukrainian people. On behalf of the Liberal Party of Canada and our parliamentary caucus, I encourage Canadians to show solidarity with our fellow citizens of Ukrainian heritage, our friends and neighbors, by showing the resolve, and such brutality must never be allowed to happen again. I thank you for having me. I wish all of you that you will keep this memory alive and you will pass it on to generations to come. Because historians sometimes have a sense of wanting not to repeat history. And I know that in the young ones, and I look at the young ones, history will go on and it will be part and parcel in the future for years to come. Thank you again.
My name is Dave Levac. I'm the M.P.P. for the riding of Brant. Doesn't mean much, and I'm the Speaker of the Ontario Legislature. Means even less. When I became aware of, with my very first visit from Boris, who is a friend of mine, and Boris, when I became aware of history that I did not know. To the spiritual leaders of the Ukrainian community and to the community at large, to all the distinguished guests that are here, colleagues all, especially the survivors who have stories to tell and lessons for us to learn, to the parents, the grandparents, and especially the children of today. When I first introduced the first private member's bill in 2007, I was questioned as to what I was talking about. No one knew. No one knew. It was indicative of the West entirely. The West did not know because the news was held back because of geopolitics. We did not know that 10 million people were killed. 6 of them children, young adults, youth, children, and babies. And when I found out that children went missing as young as 5 years old, working in the wheat fields and had a handful of rice or wheat that would not fill a shot glass, they disappeared and never to be returned again. I said to myself, I just learned that humanity died in 1932-33. And in this holy place, God, Mary, Joseph, and yes, Jesus were crying for what we were capable of doing to each other. And I made a promise to Orst. I'm not Ukrainian, Orst. I didn't even know the history. But I commit to you that I will ensure that this memory will come alive. Not knowing is as sinful as forgetting. So I persisted and introduced the bill 2 more times. And then I got an idea that this wasn't my idea, that this was for everyone. So in 2009, as was said, the very first time in Ontario's history, 3 members from 3 different parties signed a bill together. But that lesson was that in a few short years, people began to learn and understand, because a few years before that, they did not want the bill to come to the House. So we can learn. The world does acknowledge, and Ukraine remembers. And tonight I rededicate myself to work with the committee to ensure that curriculum is added to Ontario's curriculum. And we are making progress. We're very close. So today, I say thank you to all of you for allowing me for a short time to become Ukrainian. And finally, a small story. One of the survivors that lives in my riding told me the story of their family's survival when an entire village was lost. That they gave away the very little food that they had in order to help others live. What a story of determination of the Ukrainian people. Thank you for the life lessons that you've taught me as a human being. Дякую.
Your Grace, Reverend Father, elected colleagues, survivors of the Holodomor. You just heard Dave Levac, a member of provincial parliament, who was one of those instrumental for ensuring that the 4th Saturday of every November in the province of Ontario is recognized as Holodomor Day. As your local member of provincial parliament here in Mississauga, East Cooksville, it is my privilege now to read greetings from the Premier of Ontario, Dalton McGuinty. On behalf of the Government of Ontario, I'm honored to stand with the Ukrainian community as it commemorates the 79th anniversary of the Holodomor, as we pay tribute to the millions of Ukrainians who lived and died under oppression. We are reminded that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. In marking this anniversary, we are also reminded that we must continue to work to combat intolerance and to protect the rights and dignity of every human being. Please accept my best wishes, Dalton McGuinty, Premier of Ontario. On a personal note, I just want to share a story that I heard just this past summer at Queen's Park when we were celebrating Ukrainian Day. Some of you may have even been there. It's a story that really touched me. It was about a woman who escaped to Canada. And when she came here, the settlement worker asked her, "Where would you like to work?" And she said, "I want to work in a kitchen, only a kitchen." I think, Ted, you were there when we heard the story. And so the settlement worker asked her, "But why do you want to work only in a kitchen?" And she said, "Because if I work in a kitchen, I know I will never go hungry." It was a simple story, just 3 lines. But that powerful line, "I will never go hungry," spoke volumes about the crimes that were committed against her and all Ukrainians, of the evil. I've thought about it a lot, and if you were to condense the history of mankind, it comes down to this. It's always been a contest between mankind's capacity for great evil and mankind's capacity for great good. But every time evil wins, it's not because evil is stronger. It's because good people stay silent. So I think today, as we observe Holodomor Day, my request is that each of us, especially the children here, that we make a promise to ourselves that when we are tested, when it is our turn, and we will be tested in big ways and small, that when we are confronted with evil, we will find the courage to not stay silent, to speak up, and that we continue to commemorate this day so that we remember history, because as they say, those of us who forget our history are condemned to repeat it. So once again, I ask that all of us make that promise that we will not stay silent when it is our turn to confront evil. That is the best tribute we can give to the survivors amongst us here, the 5 survivors, and those who died. Thank you very much. I'd also like to take a moment to present the scroll from the Premier of Ontario to the Ukrainian Canadian Congress.
Thank you for your deeply felt and solemn commemorative remarks. And I also would like to express sincere thanks to our clergy for their spiritual leadership in today's solemn ceremony. And most of all, I would like to thank the children that have come from took time off from Ukrainian school and made these beautiful displays. They are very emotional. And again, thank you to our youth, members of SUM, PLAST, and to the University of Toronto Ukrainian Students Club for all the work that they have done in helping make today such a memorable occasion. And I want to thank all of you who have joined us in remembering the victims of the Holodomor. We remind everyone that we share a responsibility to ensure that such atrocities never, ever happen again. To all those that have needlessly perished, may their memory be everlasting. Wieczna im pamięć. Your Grace, Bishop Andriy, may I call upon you to bless the symbolic meal that we will be having shortly. Thank you.
Во ім'я Отця і Сина і Святого Духа. Амінь. Во ім'я Отця і Сина і Святого Духа. Амінь. Во ім'я Отця і Сина і Святого Духа. Амінь. Отче наш, Ти, що єси на небесах, нехай святиться ім'я Твоє, нехай прийде царство Твоє, нехай буде воля Твоя, як на небі, так і на землі. Хліб наш насущний дай нам сьогодні, і прости нам провини наші, як і ми прощаємо винуватцям нашим, і не веди нас у спокусу, але визволи нас від лукавого. Амінь. Слава Отцю і Сину і Святому Духові, нині повсякчас на віки вічні. Амінь. Господи, помилуй, Господи, помилуй, Господи, помилуй. Преосвященний владико Андрію, благослови.
O Christ God,
bless the food and drinks for thy servant, for you are always holy, now and ever, and unto the ages of ages. Amen.
And as a final note, no doubtably, I have forgotten to introduce somebody, one of our important guests, Miss Stella Ambler. Welcome and thank you for being part of this commemorative service. Thank you. And in honor of the great country that we live in, Canada, I would like for us to sing the national anthem and afterwards to be followed by the Ukrainian national anthem in memory of all those that perished in the Holodomor.